In the quiet of a late autumn afternoon, the city park was scattered with falling leaves, painting the ground in shades of gold and amber. Daniel, a middle-aged man whose face carried the weight of years gone wrong, sat alone on a worn bench. His clothes were simple and worn, and his hands trembled slightly as he clutched an old, crumpled photograph. The picture showed a younger version of himself, smiling beside a woman and a child, a glimpse into a life that had long slipped through his fingers. His eyes, tired and distant, were filled with regret as he stared at the faces that once meant everything to him. A short distance away, a teenage girl named Lily sat on another bench, her face buried in her hands as quiet sobs escaped her. Her clothes were slightly torn, her backpack tossed at her feet. She had just run away from her foster home after another heated argument, convinced that no one wanted her, that she would never belong anywhere. Her pain was raw and fresh, and she felt utterly invisible in a world that seemed to pass her by. Daniel noticed her, seeing in her the same loneliness that had consumed him for years. He hesitated, unsure if his words would be welcome. But something within him stirred, a flicker of the man he once was, the man who used to believe in kindness. Gathering his courage, he spoke, his voice low and gentle, tinged with understanding. "Rough day?" he asked softly. Lily looked up, startled by the unexpected kindness from a stranger. But when her eyes met his, she didn't see judgment or pity. She saw something else, something safe, something familiar. And in that simple moment, two broken souls, lost in their own pain, found an unexpected connection. As the sun began its slow descent, casting a warm, golden glow over the park, Daniel and Lily remained on the same bench. The air was cooler now, and the trees swayed gently as if listening to their quiet conversation. Slowly, Lily opened up, her voice shaky at first but growing steadier with every word. She spoke about her life, how she had been shuffled from one foster home to another, never staying long enough to feel safe, always feeling like a burden. Her eyes filled with tears as she admitted that she believed her future was already ruined, that people only saw her as trouble. Daniel listened without interrupting, his gaze steady, his hands resting calmly in his lap. He didn't offer empty words of comfort or false promises. He simply listened, and his silence made her feel heard in a way no one had before. After a pause, Daniel cleared his throat, his voice rough with emotion. He began to share his own story, one he hadn't spoken aloud in years. He told her how he had once been a successful businessman with a beautiful family, how his wife and young son were his entire world. But one rainy night, everything changed. A car accident took them both, leaving Daniel alone with nothing but grief and guilt. He admitted that he turned to alcohol, drowning himself in it to escape the crushing pain, losing his business, his friends, and himself along the way. His voice cracked as he whispered, "I've been running from my past for years." Neither spoke for a while after that. They just sat there, two people from completely different worlds, connected by the invisible scars they carried. And in that shared silence, a quiet bond began to form, one built on honesty, pain, and the simple act of being understood. The evening air grew cooler as the sky darkened, and Daniel quietly led Lily to a nearby cafe. The place was small but warm, its cozy lights casting a soft glow over wooden tables and worn leather chairs. The scent of fresh coffee and baked bread filled the air, wrapping them in comfort. Daniel ordered a hot chocolate for Lily and a simple black coffee for himself. They sat by the window, watching the world outside grow quieter. Lily wrapped her hands around the warm cup, her fingers still trembling slightly. After a long pause, she looked up at Daniel, her voice soft but filled with curiosity and desperation. "How do you stop the past from ruining you?" she asked, her eyes searching his face for an answer. Daniel stared into his coffee, the steam rising slowly as he thought about her question. A faint, almost bittersweet smile appeared on his face. He looked at her and said quietly, "Maybe, we don't forget. Maybe we just stop letting it decide where we go next." As he spoke, he reached into his jacket and pulled out the old, crumpled photograph he had been holding earlier, the one of him, his wife, and their son. He placed it gently on the table between them, the photo's edges worn from years of being carried. "I've carried this everywhere," he said, his voice calm and steady, "but it's not where I'm going anymore." With care, Daniel folded the photograph, not to hide it, but to finally let it rest. He slipped it into his wallet, not as a weight to carry but as a reminder of the love that once was, no longer letting it trap him in regret. In that quiet, humble act, Lily saw something she had never witnessed before, the possibility of making peace with the past. The night had settled in, quiet and still, with only the soft hum of streetlights and the occasional passing car breaking the silence. At the nearly empty bus station, the last few buses were preparing to depart. Daniel walked beside Lily, the cool night air brushing against them as they approached the platform. In his hands, Daniel carried his old, worn backpack, faded, patched in places, but sturdy. He stopped just before the bus pulled in and gently handed it to Lily. Inside were some essentials, a little money, a blanket, and a piece of paper with an address and a phone number. "There's a shelter nearby," Daniel said, his voice steady but warm. "It's run by an old friend of mine. Good people. They'll help you get back on your feet." Lily looked at him, her eyes wide, surprised by his kindness. She clutched the backpack tightly, the weight of it both literal and emotional. Daniel held her gaze and added softly, "Don't let your past chain you. Let it teach you. Use it to walk forward, not backward." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, with tears glistening in her eyes, Lily stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him in a tight, trembling hug. Daniel was taken aback at first but then gently embraced her in return, a quiet comfort passing between them. It wasn't just a goodbye, it was a promise, a silent understanding that both of them were no longer alone in their struggle. As Lily boarded the bus, she looked back at Daniel one last time, holding on to his words and kindness like a lifeline. And Daniel, standing there in the quiet night, watched with a faint, hopeful smile, knowing this act of compassion had changed them both forever. Morning light spilled across the park, casting a soft golden glow on the trees and grass still damp with dew. The same old bench sat quietly under the gentle warmth of the sun, but today, something was different. Daniel returned, not with tired eyes or heavy shoulders, but with a calm presence and a quiet smile. In his hands, he carried a cup of coffee and a simple notebook, its pages still blank, waiting to be filled. He sat down on the bench, the place where just days before he had felt trapped by his past. But now, his hands moved with purpose as he opened the notebook and began to write. His words weren't for himself alone anymore, they were for others like Lily, others who were still searching for a way out of their pain. He wrote of loss, of regret, and of the unexpected moments that remind us of our strength. Each sentence was filled with honesty and hope, a reflection of the journey he had begun, not to erase the past, but to transform it into something that could light the way forward. As Daniel continued to write, people walked by, some smiling, some lost in thought, but he remained focused, content, and at peace. The voice of the narrator softly filled the air as the scene slowly faded. Sometimes, the best way to heal your past is to help someone else leave theirs behind too. Daniel's smile lingered as he looked up from his notebook, his eyes no longer haunted but full of quiet hope. He had finally let go of the weight he carried for so long, choosing instead to live in the present, where every day held the possibility of a new beginning. And as the camera pulled away, Daniel remained, no longer just a man with a past, but a man with a purpose.